So these three gentlemen in our state-of-the-art exhibition have showed us interesting ways about the artistic process, where for the artist it's about connecting with people and to test and try out new types of experiences, explore how we can bring us together, whether it's through an interaction or whether what side of the window you're on to experience something, how to create a visual representation of people and place, or to create a space that welcomes others to explore the artist's interest or creativity. The museum's mission to be a welcoming environment that transforms lives is what sets the tone for all of our educational programs here. Yet as an educator, the idea of transforming lives is such a powerful word. Like, how do we do that? What is transforming? How do I know if we've transformed lives at the museum? And so I hope through this presentation we'll explore with Andy and Watie and Kedgar what they think they do in affecting people. So the first speaker today is Andy DuCett, and he joins us from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Much of his work is an exploration of experience between people and artwork. And if you've been to the Mom booth, which is on the other side of the North Gallery, the artist plays on the idea of an information booth with actual mothers who are your earlier sets of information, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. I don't know if you've ever had that experience with your mom, but I have that every day. The work is made as much by the viewer's experience and the enjoyment of it as an artist. So let's welcome Andy.
Thank you guys very much. And thank you all for being here. It's a really special privilege to be here. A special thank you to Don, Chad, and Jennifer and Allie, and everybody that made this whole experience possible. Because I think that through the conversations like we're having and every artwork that you see and every artist that you talk to in the exhibition, there really is something special about what's happening right here, and I feel very happy to be a part of it. So if this panel is going to be about participation, something that I would like to talk about that I think leads to participation is going to be the art of the invitation. Because you can't really have participation, I don't believe, at least from my perspective, and all of my comments aren't meant to be these overarching, grandiose kind of thoughts on what things should be. They're all going to be my opinions from kind of where I've traveled. So for me, in order to have good participation, I think that you need to think about what's a good way to invite somebody into even wanting to participate in the first place. And there's some things that are just like no-brainers. As soon as you see them, it's like, well, of course I want to participate, like this, right? Like, there's no way that you're going to see something like this and you're not going to want to go in for like a cuddly animal hug because it's just too cute. So what I'd like to do at the beginning is I'd like to examine some different things that maybe suggest good or bad participation, carrying off of this idea of maybe like a hug. So there's a program in Seattle where they have like free hug day, and this was a photo from 2006. So this is an idea of a good invitation because it's in a public place. And you're asking somebody to hug, which is a very personal thing. You're coming into personal space, you're hugging somebody. So let's go down the list of all the things here that make this maybe a willing thing to do, to maybe be willing to go into someone else's space. They look fairly well, showered and groomed. They're smiley, they're happy, they're friendly. You're in a public space. There's a bunch of them. Other people are already taking part of this. There's all of these cues that really make it seem like an okay, safe thing to do. So let's dial it back a little bit and maybe like a sort of okay version of like an invitation. So here we have a capitalist who's like, okay, here's a good idea that why should we give this away for free? Let's charge $2 and also let's give a deluxe hug, which has a slightly creepy angle to it, which also maybe makes it seem like sort of an okay invitation. So let's dial it way down from kittens and a rabbit, and then like a deluxe hug to this right here. This is a bad invitation. This is maybe not an invitation that's going to be met. Okay, let's give another example. Everybody loves candy, right? Where would be the greatest place to go get candy in this country? Here's the President and the First Lady of the United States of America. You're all dressed up. You're going to go get candy. It's probably the safest place in the entire world to get candy. This is a really fantastic invitation. By contrast, this is maybe not a good place to go get free candy. Okay, so thinking about these ideas and some of the work, or the work that I made for the show for the mom booth, I wanted to think about what was a good way to have an invitation. Carrying these examples through, maybe this wasn't the best way to get somebody to engage with mothers, say, in the mom booth. However, this is maybe a really great example of to get people to feel comfortable enough to go and then to interact with this art form. Just a moment to brag right here. That's my mom. Hey, Mom. So I was really happy to see that this was kind of at the beginning of the show to get people to kind of know what was going to be happening in an exhibition like State of the Art, because there's a lot of things in the exhibition that maybe challenge the notion of what contemporary art can be. In my own work, in thinking about participation, which is still fairly new for me in my practice, something that I've come to think about in the idea of the invitation is the idea of concave versus convex. So if you think of concave, something sinking in, or convex, something coming out towards you, I think of that in terms of the invitation. So in terms of a concave invitation for the mom booth, here are the moms standing behind the booth, knitting, comfortably kind of chatting. They're allowing you to enter into this work, allowing you to approach it, to be comfortable enough to be able to interact and carry on this conversation. Now, convex might be something where they're offering you things, they're extending into your space. They're really asking you to engage, maybe without getting your permission at the beginning. So something that I think is really wonderful about this experience, and really all of the volunteers that have made the work what it is, I've been so fortunate to be able to work with such wonderful people. For all of the different kinds of mothers there's all of the different kinds of ways that they could feel comfortable in participating and activating this booth. So to back up a little bit, how did I get to this point? The work that I'm making right now didn't necessarily start with participation. Some of my earlier work, this is a work from 2009 called Similarly Addressing the Mapmaker's Illness. This was at a gallery in Minneapolis, and this was indicative of the work that I've been making for about 4 or 5 years. I was really interested in stuff. I was really interested in this stuff of life. Things that were cast-offs, things that I would find in alleys, things that I would find at estate sales, things that had meaning in all of these things. It was through all of these objects that I wanted viewers to look through to remember the context from whence they came. So this was an exhibition I had at a place called Art of This Gallery in Minneapolis. All of these objects put together, all that have certain kind of cultural but also personal meaning with them, all piled together, kind of a collapsing of geography, of time, of space, of history, of personal or cultural attachment. All of these in one spaces that allow different viewers to enter into different objects, to expand and to remind them of where they came from. So these things were my intentions. It wasn't until a friend of mine, after seeing my work for a couple years, looked at this piece in particular and was like, why are you doing this? Like, you're setting up a playground, but you're kind of like erecting a fence around it. You're not really letting us play. One of the greatest compliments that I had received from him was like, listen, I want to go in there and I want to live. I want to sit inside this thing and just exist, which really made me think for a little bit. Why was I making these things? Was it more powerful to suggest what these things could be or where they came from, or was it maybe more powerful to invite people to come in? Viewers, maybe now as participants. So right now in my work, I'm interested in what kind of invitations work in art. So borrowing from that earlier example of concave versus convex, these are some examples of some recent artworks that I've done that I consider both concave and convex. So a concave artwork, again, allowing you to come into that artwork, allowing you to participate if you're comfortable. This is a piece from a show I had in 2012 called Why We Do This that was as simple as having 2 boxes of pencils, one with please and one with thank you, written above them, and a pencil sharpener in the beginning, without going on to long kind of like didactic conversations about why or what the subject of this show was. This is really a simple pleasure that I kind of miss, like licking stamps, or I kind of miss sharpening pencils, just those little things that in your daily life you kind of like, I kind of appreciate that action. So if you wanted to participate, you sharpen a pencil and then put it in that box. One of the other simple pleasures that I think people have, at least I hope, are things like popping bubble wrap. So this is 5 layers of bubble wrap on the floor of the gallery, about 100 feet long, with a bunch of balloons on the wall that people would, is this art? Can I do this? Is this okay? It was that sort of suspicious invitation because you're always, this is the art stance, away from the thing. So no, you can walk on that, you can engage. And by the look of it, how it looked at the end of the night, people clearly were okay with engaging with this artwork, which I was really, really happy with. So another example of maybe concaveness is this is an actual section of a commercial airliner that I rented. That you knew this from where it was in popular culture, from where you traveled to get from point A to point B, but when you sat in here, it's a chair, it's inviting. There's a book that I really recently got called Chairs Are Where the People Go. This is an inviting form for you to sit down. If you want to recline, if you want to lower your seat back or tray table, and then look at the information card in back, through the windows, there's a reverse projected image of clouds going by as if you were on an actual airplane. It was allow you to take maybe out of context and then to see, again, to kind of shift the context and allow you to be comfortable in sitting in this space. The thing that you see at the end, all in yellow there, is something that I call the National Geographic Reading Room, another example of concave. That's 9,000 National Geographics and a fake leather sofa that you could sit in, grab any one of those copies, read, put it back, again, stay as long as you would like, sit if you would like, take a copy of a magazine if you would like, allowing you to make certain decisions about whether or not you'd like to enter into that work. Another example of this would be the life-size kind of, or the supersized version of Battleship right here. Using things as toys that we're all comfortable with, that we want to play with, that you maybe could stand back and just appreciate it as a sculptural object. Maybe you could actually try to play a game like these two women are right here, shouting their intentions with megaphones in order to play a full game of Battleship right here. So concave, you go into it. Now some convex work, some ideas of how maybe a work enters into your space that you have to deal with that at a certain point. I really think that humor is one of the things that I like using in my work, because if you are going to have something coming into your space and maybe disarm people a little bit, making the intentions known that this is non-threatening and this is something that you know about and this is going to be funny. So at 718 in front of the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, Ecto 2 pulls up, and if you're familiar with the Ghostbusters franchise, you know exactly what this is, and right away you're like, what is going on here? So Ecto 2 pulls up. You're in a museum, it's an encyclopedic museum. Maybe you're standing there and maybe you get scanned by members of the Ghostbusters crew, but you realize like, okay, you're not looking for me, this is cool, I feel good about this. They go about their business, eventually catching a ghost, posing for photos, signing an autograph, getting back in their car, and then going away. A quick little art kind of happening that, again, comes into your space and then leaves. As part of that large exhibition that where the pencil sharpener and the bubble wrap was, this is a section that I called the Hall of High Fives. At the end of this hallway was a reverse projected video of what the players see at TCF Bank Stadium at the University of Minnesota, where the Golden Gophers play. I filmed in the players' tunnel right before the players ran out on their opening day. On that note, football players are really, really big. So in filming that video, when you turn the corner, you kind of hear this noise before you get to this experience. And when you get there, you realize that it's actual members from the Minneapolis South High School football team in full pads, chanting, jumping up and down, encouraging you by holding out their hands to run down this hallway. When you do that and you look and everybody is really excited, you're kind of like, yeah, I'm excited too. So you slap hands, then you run out onto the field. Again, it's coming into your space audibly, physically, coercing you into participate, but again, hopefully in a good way. This is an area that I called the Harlequin Romance Room, where a lifelike Fabio impersonator handed out 300 long stem roses to people that would walk by. Even if you weren't necessarily like, what is this? I'm not sure if I want to participate in this. Maybe you were winked at. Maybe there was kind of a glance. Maybe there was an extension of a rose that again, you're kind of like, okay. And then you took that. All the roses were gone, and there's some really wonderful stories about this specifically. Again, public-private space, concave, convex, like, okay, I'm at a museum, I'm just gonna go use the bathroom. What is a tuba player doing in the bathroom? I can't get away from this. So all of these things are things that I'm interested in. But why is participation important? And why now in art, or why now in my practice, are some of these things that I really want to investigate? This is something that people are generally familiar with when you go to an art museum. I mean, there's an art stance that you have to assume, right? Like you step back with one leg, you put your hand knowingly on your chin, and you contemplate. This was dialoguing with art. This was participation for an awful long time in art practice, where you understood history and context and concept, and if you were in the know, you were able to talk eloquently about certain things that people in the know did. But now more than ever, art is asking for a different kind of engagement and dialogue. It's coming into your space. It's asking you to consider and think about different things. Things that maybe weren't materials before are now being considered as much as traditional materials are throughout all of art history. And I think an exhibition like State of the Art has really wonderful examples of a lot of these different approaches that artists are taking. For me personally, if I'm suggesting all of these different kind of objects, these discrete objects I was using before, that I wanted you to look through to remember where they were maybe in your life to recall those spaces, I wanted to think about the idea, playing off the idea of Yves Foutuan or Gaston Bachelard's Poetics of Space, or the idea of space and place. Space is kind of unactivated space or place. It's a container. It's something that it's just an object. It's just a space. But when you have human interaction, when you have meaning overlapping that to elevate it, to turn it into something special, the way maybe historical markers do on the side of a road, it elevates it from space to place. It's no longer just a cardboard box. I mean, this is a cardboard box of really cute kittens that you probably have strong or, either way, opinions about how that's being activated. I'm really interested in how participation and that invitation to participate, again, can elevate something from space to place. But that's not the only way that artists are using this. Participation can be used for dialogue. It can be used for examination, for conceptual deep diving, for action, social chains, for personal realignment, and many, many more things that even if we could think of all of those things right now, we're constantly going to extend the football metaphor, we're going to keep moving the chains in art to keep changing the definition of what these things can be used for. So for me as well, the thing that I would like to invite, or the thing that I'm really interested in, is what else is out there? To borrow Calvin and Hobbes, what are you wanting to investigate? What are you looking to explore? Because through this invitation and through participation, what you're really asking, or what I hope to be asking with the Mom Booth and some of my other works is, okay, this is something that maybe you didn't see in context before, maybe you didn't consider as art. Where can it go from here? So to borrow a quote from Dave Hickey's air guitar from the essay Romancing the Looky-Loos, participation increases the social value of things that you love. That's what I'm interested in, is how can you take things that you really care about, maybe that you kept outside of capital A art context, how can you move that into the arena for consideration? In that same essay, he takes a quote from Peter Sheldall, which I will allow some friends that you may know here to help explain the quote. How do you take participation and turn it into something else? How do you start a movement? Peter Sheldall suggests that you move to a city. You hang out in bars, you form a gang, you turn it into a scene, and you start a movement. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but if you look at art history, if you look at contemporarily what's happening, it's people that are opining certain things that they're passionate about and saying, what about this? Why can't this be something that we can all get behind and get excited about? That said, and also to continue the Muppet metaphor, while you're doing this, there's always going to be people like this somewhere else while you're trying to do this that maybe aren't so supportive of you, to put it short. So my invitation to all of you, this is, in the symposium, what can we carry out of this? Where can we go from here? How can we all come together, get excited about something, and then carry these out in the world? My invitation, to simplify it, to call your mother. However, in thinking about this and going farther with this, really what I'm asking is, what's your invitation? Where do you want to take this? What are you inspired by? What are you interested in? What can you show us that in turn might challenge definitions that we have that can make us participate in ways that we didn't think possible? Thank you guys very much.
Well, I think that we know what we're doing for our Q&A. We got to talk to the audience. Okay, the next person up is Waite White. He currently works as a painter and printmaker based in Omaha, Nebraska. Before moving to Omaha, he was integrally involved in the Chicago Printmakers Collaborative. Watie has 2 floors of studio, which are filled with fruits of his obsessive workings. Drawings, paintings, and prints fill every wall. At the State of the Art exhibition, his print series carefully observes his neighborhood landscape, but inserts surprises for the close observer. Animals and people mate in the shadows, transforming an otherwise realist composition into a humorous twist. So definitely changing our ideas of perception and storytelling. Let's welcome Watie.
Thank you. The work I'm going to be talking about today is the public work that I make through collaborations with area nonprofits in Omaha, and specifically the two projects that I am working on right now, some that I just installed. And so these are the first one that I'll be talking about. I moved to Omaha from Chicago in 2006. And I have been involved with nonprofits in one way or another since about the age of 10, when my parents started one. And so when I moved to Omaha, and this is probably something fairly familiar to people who live here in Bentonville, it is hard to not get involved. It's hard to not want to see the results of your own actions in your own community. And also being a transplant, you feel both curious and connected wherever you go, but also you feel a little bit displaced. There is rarely a place that I have ever felt where I was only in the one place that I was meant to be. So the first body of work I want to show you guys is a collaboration that I'm doing with an area nonprofit in Omaha called Justice for Our Neighbors, who do new immigrant advocacy and legal work. And a kind of casual conversation turned into a more detailed conversation, which turned into a series of murals, which are portraying new immigrants, people who have made the journey to Omaha, and giving them giving them a way to have their own voice and their own image in their own communities. So this person, her name was Andrea. What I would do is do an interview with her, usually the first or second time that I'd met this person, listen to them, ask them questions about their life, and let them talk and let them tell me their own stories. I'm incredibly fortunate because the people telling me stories tell me the most amazing stories, and they tell me the most incredibly inspiring things and humbling things, so that as I go through these, the experience of doing these, it gives me not only a different view of my own community, the broadness of my community, the trials of my community, but the depths of humanity and connection and empathy that these people develop with me and that I develop with them and with many, many other people. So this series of murals has taken, it's in a community called Benson in Omaha, Nebraska. These were preparatory drawings that I was doing on the walls of the buildings I was using. What I did was first did a woodcut portrait, and then we used all the partner organizations for this project, of which there are 5. They all showed up with people to help paint in these communities. People who lived in the communities, people who were new immigrants, people who worked alongside, people who were allies, people who were just out and were attracted to building something that they had never been a part of before. We had about 75 people come, and this woman, or this young woman's mother, was one of the models. A lot of these murals seem like to me, they felt like they were coming directly out of my own studio practice, which is often overthought, is often drawn out of something that feels very sincere and tries to tell a true story, which is harder than it seems like it should be. But trying to tell stories and to shine a light on people's lives that don't necessarily always get the brightest of light shine on them. So this woman, Mary, was one of the models, and so the statement on the front of that is something that she said to me during our interview, and then I would record it and place it on top. This woman named Ramona is another one of the murals that we are doing. The murals are then painted on public buildings that are within the communities that the models live in. The models opt into the process. They generally enjoy it. They tell stories throughout it to us, to people there that they work with. Again, very kind of beautiful and poetic, but ones that feel generous in order to even get the chance to hear or to see. Another project that I'm working on, and this is one that one of the original paintings is in the show, is a collaboration I've been doing for the past several years with Habitat for Humanity. They came to me. Actually, I had coffee with their executive director. When in a community like Omaha, once you start acting in the community, once you start doing anything, people naturally gravitate to you, or it seems like you wind up talking to a lot of people you didn't know you had so much in common with. And so I was talking with a woman who wound up being the executive director of Habitat for Humanity, and she remarked that they had this incredible backlog of condemned homes. And wouldn't it be interesting to do something with it? At the time, I was working with another nonprofit to devise a series of murals in a part of Omaha that has very little traditional mural surfaces. So I was trying to think of very alternate ways of painting and alternate ways of activating people to see something transformative in creative practice. And so she offered me one of their condemned homes to see what I would do. It turned into me conducting an extensive series of interviews with everybody I could get to talk to me who lived nearby, anybody who lived in the houses that I could track down, anybody who grew up nearby that I could find a connection to, people who work in that community, people who live in that community, people who, the police who work that beat, and making paintings to go in every window of all the houses. I've done 3 of them so far, I guess. I also went in to the houses, and because one of the dilemmas about these is that there's no value in these homes. These homes are condemned. They're slated for demolition by the city. They have largely been condemned for years, for 10 years, 5 years, whatever. If you own this house, if you were given this house, you are obligated to spend $12,000 to demolish it. The fact that that nothing about the home held value seemed very strange to me. The fact that the role that they played in their communities was as a blight seemed strange. The stories that the neighbors would tell me would often be the worst kind of urban legend, which was often not actually true, but held some kind of emotional truth for the people who lived there. They felt like they were next to a crack house, even if no one ever dealt crack out of that house. And so making usable objects out of the material of the house and placing those within the community that could be used to both view the installation of these paintings was really helpful. To take the stories that neighbors told and be able to find both ways that these stories of multiple neighbors would overlap, that they would discredit one another, that some of them would tell me layers of the stories that other ones would not want to tell this this random guy who showed up outside this abandoned home and wanted to talk to people about what they do. One of the great stories that came out of this was that the neighbors who talked to me about this specific house at 1468 Emmett Street told me these stories about how it used to be this incredible community, that it was a big family, that people loved each other, and that they had these big block parties and would just celebrate the entire community. And then eventually someone told me that the block parties had actually been thrown by the chapter of the Hells Angels that lived across the street, and that one of them had a friend who had this horse farm, and then they brought these ponies down, and that was why the kids had these memories of pony rides every summer for years. That so many of the neighbors started their own motorcycle clubs. That the Hells Angels provided de facto security for the neighborhood, and that gave it this sense of security that it lacked ever since they left. The woman in purple, also in blue, her name was Aretha Walker. We actually were able to track her down because when we were going through the home, we found her name written in the handwriting of a 10-year-old girl on the underside of a bookshelf in a closet. And we were able to reach out to her, and she went to lunch with me and told me stories about her family and about growing up in that house and in that neighborhood, and the kind of things her mother did and the kind of things, the lessons that her mother taught her. And then also the lessons that she taught her own children who were the age of her in her stories. And so in this case, as in most of the cases in this project, any of the people who model for the paintings, and the people who tell me stories of the paintings, they model. They are in the paintings. They act out the stories that they tell, usually using their own family. And so there's a nice kind of intergenerational play. Lessons that her mother taught her about cooking, that she has passed on to her own daughter, that sit in the windows of the kitchen of that house. So these paintings are painted on paper, as the ones in the show. They're then scanned and printed on vinyl and then glued to sheets of plywood, which are used to board up the houses from the inside, so that the boards can come down off the outsides of the doors and the windows. And hopefully, effectively, turning a blighted environment and a blighted neighbor into an asset for the people who live next door. This is Miss Maybell. She lives across the street. She was the first one to tell me stories that did not tell me stories about the Hells Angels. So one of the things that I feel is really important, one of the things that kind of kept coming up when I was talking in the galleries today, was the sense of acknowledging and embracing the fact that you're going to be smarter at the end of a project than you are at the beginning, that you learn things as you go, and you shift things as you go because you're learning more, there's more information, and you're wiser at the end of it. And one of the things that shifted in this was that Habitat for Humanity gave me 2 homes, not just one. And I was able to track down one of the people Aretha, who lived in one of the homes, and was able to tell me all these beautiful and poetic stories about her childhood there, and was able to model for them and use her own family and her children to model for the characters. And the home next door to it had been gutted by a fire, and had been a daycare for years before that. And the connection to any recent people had been disconnected. I had not been able to find anyone. But what I did find were the pieces, the clues that the house had preserved from the fire, things that had fallen behind the baseboards of the house. That last one was a small photograph I found of a girl from the 20s. I found a section of wallpaper protected behind a mirror. On that wallpaper was, or behind that mirror was the only section of wallpaper that was protected by the fire. On that wallpaper, the family that lived there in 1950 all wrote their names. One of the people who wrote their names on it had the same name as my father. So this is my dad. While sending my assistant and other collaborators to the house to continue removing material, one of the neighbors rightfully saw sketchy-looking people going into an abandoned home. Surely they're up to no good, and called the cops on them. Officer Molly Hyatt there on the left showed up with guns drawn and nearly arrested my assistant, who's down there in the red. And I did not get to find out if you can use grant money to pay for bail, which is would have been a nice little addendum, I think. So this is the house that was gutted by a fire, what the installation looks like. You can see the area on the side where it all came out. The homes are going to be demolished still. The first home that I installed, the home that the piece in the show is from, was demolished in May of 2013. These two homes are going to be demolished December 5th. A lot of the neighbors have been waiting for years to get rid of these homes, and so there is something kind of bittersweet about making them value them again right before they go away. But at the same time, they see a lot of themselves. They see their neighbors. They see their family. They see people that they know in these pictures. They see stories that they were part of in them. We built 8 benches and a 30-foot table out of the material of the house. When we opened it, about 275 people came up to a part of town that people in Omaha don't really go into. From outside that community don't really go into that community, and people inside that community are largely disconnected and cut off from the rest of the city. Public transportation is not something that is very effective in Omaha, and it's located in pockets of generational poverty. My assistant and I, through a series of block parties, using the space, using the table that we made. Although block party is probably a little exaggerated. This is still from the opening. There's not this many people. We would have dinners for the neighbors and for leaders of nonprofits in North Omaha. And generally there would be about 30 people there. About half of them would be people who lived on the block. About half of them would be people from outside. These have been incredibly rewarding to do. It feels I'm very honored by the people who participate with me in it, by the people who live next door, who come over every time I go to the house, people who see it as an asset. It's been great. I think that's it.
Thanks, Watie. That was brilliant how close you got to the community and the people, and how you spent time to do the paintings and share it with everyone, and just to walk in their shoes and see the other side. And I think with Kedgar, this will be sort of an interesting switch for your discussion. And Kedgar moved to Jacksonville, Florida about 5 years ago from his native home in Cuba. And when he got there, he was struck by the uninhabited spaces in American city centers. He noticed that the urban cores are often abandoned after work hours, and apartment dwellers are rarely seen in the neighborhoods. Volta started to create these interactive videos to examine the different urban experiences where the neighbor interaction in the street life was constant. So at Crystal Bridges, in the state-of-the-art exhibition, you'll see 24 video screens in a grid. And the work suggests that an apartment building with its outer wall is peeled away to reveal the inhabitants' lives and the relationships among them.
Art builds bridges. It connects cultures, and it opens dialogues. I am originally from Havana, Cuba, and until recently, that was my world. My world was best described by the philanthropist Don Fernando Ortiz when he said, "Cuba is a melting pot, mix of kitchens, races, and cultures, dense broth of civilization that boils on the Caribbean fire." And this is where I come from. A place where social interactions are an unavoidable part of the way of living. If you ever have the chance to walk the streets of Havana, you will feel that the city is alive. It's inviting. You will find a sincere smile. You will feel welcomed. These social interactions are very much part of who I am as a person. That's why in 2008, when I moved from Cuba to the United States, I started to feel that I was losing that connection, that I was losing my language, my food, that I have lost my home. While I was forced to find my new space, I unconsciously looked for the connections between my culture, the Cuban culture, and the American culture. That middle point where I could feel comfortable and be myself, even if that meant changing some things along the way. In my new search, I realized how real social interactions were being replaced by interactions dictated by the social media. That didn't feel quite the same. It couldn't replace the honesty of a real conversation where body language and words can tell a more comprehensive story. I also realized that the image we portray and our identity in these social media sites are not quite true, are not 100% honest. It's very easy. In this digital age, we are much more careful on what we say, how we say it, and what we share. And that even goes to the way we look. It's so easy with phone cameras to have lots and lots of photographs. But how do you decide which ones you keep and which ones you delete and even share? Typically, if you look good in a photo or you like that photograph, you keep it. If you look bad or you don't like the photo, you just delete it, right? It's so easy just to take the new one. We all, to some degree, care about how we look and what other people think about us. So I took this photo of myself and I went out to the community and I started asking people, can I take a photo of you knowing ahead of time that you're not gonna look good? You're gonna look as worse as I can possibly make you look. And on top of that, I was not gonna let you see the image until it went on public display for everyone to see. We presented this scenario to thousands of people in the community, and more than 600 were up to the challenge. We took photos around town in different locations, and we told them that if their photo came bad enough, they were gonna make the cut and go to the wall. We invited everyone, not only the ones that participated, but all the people that we talked to. And we invited them to come and see the wall and find themselves, find people that they know, find other people in the community. I wanted to see their reactions. The exhibit only lasted for 5 hours on one day. And after it went down, we gave away the photos to all the participants, at least those that wanted to keep their image. And we encouraged them to share these portraits and make them their profile picture on Facebook. For me personally, it was an exercise in tolerance and adaptability as a reflection of my own reality as an immigrant. Sometimes I go back in my mind to Cuba, and I remember myself photographing a small fishing community south of Havana where I used to spend my summers, or documenting the life of a small rural town where my family is originally from, or simply photographing the streets of Havana. Street photography is, I'm gonna go back, not yet. Street photography is inspiring for me. Oftentimes I try to replicate that experience by going out in the streets here where I live, in Jacksonville, Florida, and try to capture those moments. But I was coming back with empty spaces. And I was not looking for that. I was not waiting for the area to be desolated for me to take the photo. They were really empty. They were lifeless facades. Absent any human presence in this photo series, I found it incomplete. An unfinished canvas waiting to be populated. But where did all the people go? Well, one possible explanation is that they have moved to bigger cities or better cities that they consider to be a better fit for themselves. So I went after them. I traveled to some of those cities, and indeed, they were. I have found them. The only thing that I needed to do is bring them back to my spaces. But the question was how? How do I do that? I decided to apply my own visual process of urbanization, relocating life and activity from these places to those barren I have photographed. By removing all inanimated objects and structures from these videos and projecting what was left behind, the life, onto my photographs, I was able to create the kinetic urban scene that I was originally looking for. And this is not an isolated issue. Many city centers throughout America are facing the same reality. Urban cores are often abandoned after workday hours end, and apartment dwellers rarely know their nearest neighbors. On the opposite side of that, urban life and neighbors' interactions are always present in Cuba. In order to show you that very different reality that I have experienced, I have created an interactive video installation that is at state of the art here at the museum. I invite you to see the place where I grew up, meet the people, step closer and discover our cultural differences, but also let yourself be discovered. Take this journey through 24 microcosms of Cuban lives. Hopefully, by the end of your journey, you have found that middle point between your culture and mine, that point where we're both comfortable and we can both be ourselves. If you do that, then art can build bridges, connect cultures, and open dialogues. Thank you.
That was, well, I feel transformed. So I was wondering, at what point in your artistic process did you start realizing how your artwork was serving society having a responsibility to helping us come together. Was there a particular moment in your process that you realized that this is contributing to bringing the community together?
I think that process, that process always happens. I mean, it's always traditionally happened. I think it happens on a smaller scale or a more public scale. I think that it happens in the studio, or it happens just with people when they interact with the piece. I think that having that kind of expectation at the beginning of a project is a really impossible bar to live up to. That thinking that you're going to do something big and portentous, it feels incredibly egotistical to think that it's possible. But there are times that you can sort of look back, I think, and be like, oh, well, I remember that happened. That legitimately happened. That was great. When that person who modeled, had that reaction, or all those people that I don't know showed up that one day. But I have a short memory, so it's only from like 2 weeks ago. So, someone else.
Jacksonville is not a very big city like New York could be, or Boston. But I have found that there's a lot to do, and everyone, to an extent, have a small responsibility to change the place where you live and make it a better place. The only thing that I have to compare Jacksonville is with my Cuba. So just by comparing and trying to find the things that were better for me there and try to bring them here, I feel that I'm contributing to my city. And even if it's a very small thing and everyone does the same, eventually it can be a better place.
I can't top those. I was actually hoping that you could repeat the question. I was hoping I would figure that out as they were talking, remind myself what it was. I was thinking about what great answers they were.
Well, how about, I think that we should turn it to one of your questions, back to the audience, and what can you show us? How can you contribute to being together and interacting as people? Maybe we can just have a talk about that. I knew you were going to ask the question. Here, let me get you the mic. Or you could shout it out because we're a small crowd.
I think just in the being here, we are connecting with each other, because I live in Bella Vista. I'm surrounded by elderly people, myself included, I guess, although I don't want to admit it. And we go in and out of our garage, and the door comes down, and we meet once a month for breakfast, and we exchange the local gossip. But to say that more than one of those people is my friend, that I have any influence over, would be very difficult. When I come here, the more often that I come here, I see a familiar face from another part of town, and I know instantly that their being here means that we have some kind of a connection. And I feel comfortable enough to go up to them and say, this is who I am. I don't know who you are, but could we find a basis for friendship, even if it's in the fact that we're volunteers together, even if it's in the fact that you, Andy, or any of you other artists, that all of a sudden we feel connected to you, that we now are a community that we didn't even know existed before. And that gives me great satisfaction as a person. And I have a question for you guys. How long did it take from conception of what you were going to do, either in the film or in the houses? What kind of period of time was that?
Long.
Yeah, long. I think with me, it was about 8 months full time, from the time I started doing the interviews till it got installed. Yeah. What about you?
Oh, she said houses and videos. That's
Oh.
not me.
Well, in my case, the process is very long, but it's not the active working. It's not active and working all the time. There's a big part of that time that is just dedicated to thinking, and the way artists approach the work varies. The way I do it is I usually have a very defined idea before I start working, and that defining that idea takes quite a amount of time. For the installation that I have here at Crystal Bridges, it took about a year from beginning to end. And I would say 3-4 months coordinating, thinking about it, exactly how it was going to be. Then probably 15 days producing the videos, and a few months for here and there, and then it's completed, but it's not all the time active work.
Yeah. Oh. Does anybody else have any questions?
You know, I don't know much about art at all, to be honest with you. And what I've been impressed with is how people have such an in-depth explanation for something I would have no clue is behind the art by just looking at it. And so, I mean, how is it, I mean, when you try to come up with an idea, I'm sure it just doesn't pop into your head, or maybe it does, or can you talk about how you evolve the idea, or is it a series of writing, sketches? You talk with a lot of other people. I mean, how do you go from just this amorphous idea to the physical thing that you put in a museum?
At the risk of giving maybe like a cheesy, but I hope super genuine art answer, it's kind of taken a lifetime to arrive at some of the distinctions that I think that I personally have made. And I think it's giving myself permission to maybe trust some of those things. So I think it's constantly arriving at different destinations throughout your process, but then being able to step back and perhaps and then dialogue and then seeing if it's maybe worth anything. One of the really nice things about the collection that Crystal Bridges has, or institutions that are similar to it, where it has very current contemporary artwork, but also, you know, historical masterworks and other pieces throughout history, is that you can walk back through the provenance of art and then see how artists have continually given themselves permission to continue progressing what some of those things are. So I think what people don't see an awful lot is inside maybe an artist's head, which a lot of the times are just kind of going subtly like, like kind of not being certain maybe if what you're doing is worthwhile, or if what you're doing has conceptual rigor or validity or has substance. I think it's, again, permission to give yourself the option to put it out there, to dialogue, and to maybe celebrate it not working as much as it does work, and then to see where some of those things land.
With me personally, I'll probably give a different side of your answer. I do a lot of sort of reinventing things, right? I work with materials that I haven't worked with before. I work with techniques I haven't worked with before. And I kind of jump in and commit to doing something, and then have to take all these steps or figure out what the questions are that I need to ask, and then need to figure out the most appropriate answer in order to move on. In the case of for instance, the project with the murals, at very first blush, it seemed like a very straightforward thing that I was going to make a very simple kind of black and white painting. And I'd done plenty of murals before, but realizing that what I was doing, that how I was working, that how I was going to be working with the organizations that I was working with, that underpinning all of it had to be the idea that anybody who came into contact with the project needed to benefit from it, so that we had to do the fundraising in-house so that we weren't using up the resources of the organization I was working with. That I knew that conceptually the kind of person that would be most appropriate as a model, but the leap between this idea of a person and an actual real person who has an actual real story that they lived with their life, that's a very, broad gulf there. And figuring out how I meet that person was something I could not do on my own. So for that, we had to establish a committee of other organizations individually who work with specific people who would then be people that would be interested or excited or see some benefit to themselves to have their likeness and their life story be part of something that is clearly art with a capital A, and art that's going to be around for until their grandchildren are adults, that they will be more fully part of a community, more officially part of that community, as official as we can possibly make it, and that they belong where they live, and that that they are part of that, and to all those steps that would then make the actual painting of the thing a little bit secondary almost. That a lot of the ideas of the benefit of the project or the merit of the project are in these other sort of non-art steps as well.
You're going to go. Sorry.
No, I think they covered the subject.
We have another question.
All three of you, from what I've read about you, and I know you, Watie, come from such diverse backgrounds, which is really inspiring to me as a consumer of art, as a viewer of art, especially public art. And I wanted to ask you guys, as creators of public art that inspire so much observations of our identity and meaning making with our identity in your viewers, have you ever encountered any challenges, and what were your perspectives on that, entering spaces that you are not members of, going into other cities and other neighborhoods and other cultures, really even just within your own groups in your communities? How do you stay respectful of other people's experiences and identities while still giving the viewer a way to observe it?
Well, yeah.
Your experience and the gaze that you're causing the viewer to see the art through, which is yours sometimes.
For me personally, it comes about sharing the experience. And you either relate with it or not. Many times the work starts in a very selfish way. It's just a simple thought that comes from something from within, and from there it goes out. The installation of the faces started the same way. And it was extremely interesting, but because I requested people, can I take a photo of you? And they looked at the sample photos they have, which include mine and Ariane's that is right here, and they totally say, no, I don't want to have my photo taken. So for whatever reason, they didn't feel comfortable embracing the idea. And I respected that, and I actually invite them to the show. But I guess I was coming from a very personal place and putting myself out there, what I had in my mind at the moment. And I guess after that, it's just open to interpretation, I guess.
And maybe with my work, I don't see my work as being necessarily edgy or confrontational or political or those things yet. I suppose if a site or a context or a specific, because I really like my work situating in a specific site. So site specificity, what does that call for? What does the audience expect? Maybe that'll be the case someday. But as far as, and I think probably all of us in thinking about how the work is going to be consumed, is that you try to anticipate what reactions are going to happen. How could you maybe turn up the volume on certain areas, or how you could turn it down on certain areas? How could that level of, I guess, expected dialogue maybe in some way and build into the fabric of the work? I really like humor in artwork. I really like that as an entry point into thinking about how you can have someone be engaged. So almost the opposite of being challenged and trying to think about how do I encompass all of these, very diverse perspectives. I think that, if people are people, I think that humor is one of those things that bind us all together. So I like people entering into it that way to be able to get to content. I guess my fear is that some people will walk away thinking that's like, oh, it's just like a joke, or oh, it's like a one-liner, or oh, there's something that's just kind of entertaining. But I like having that initial experience so that if someone goes away, they're perhaps comfortable thinking about how that resonates, how they can unpack that later, and how the next time they encounter something that was maybe just saw as like a cast-off kind of one-over kind of experience, the next time they encounter that in a non-art context, that's where I want some of that dialogue to happen. But yeah.
In the case of my work, there is a lot of working with communities or populations that are labeled at risk or who have traditionally not been the subject or not been in control of their own image a little bit. And so for me, it's really very important to have people not only opt in to the whole process, but eagerly come in, and then to see my role as one where I do a lot more listening and asking questions and being interested in their stories, and being sort of fascinated by their stories, and then being able to not necessarily give one, in the case of like the houses, there's so many conflicting stories about things that, I can't give one that much more weight than another, just finding a balance out there and not letting, the hardest thing for me actually is being able to find those moments where I can allow humor in and still feel like it's being respectful and being honest and being truthful. Because humor is such a huge part of how we all interact, and it's a huge underpinning of what how we live in our own communities or how we live with other people. I'm guessing that answers over.
Ron, we have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's use all of it.
I actually,
Milk this.
I actually called security to do that.
Oh, very nice.
So, it's, no,
Good.
just joking. Do we have any other questions? Okay, Kristen.
I just have a comment. Like, I don't make the kind of work you guys make. I do some work with schools and that, but your work is much more interactive. And one of the things I really love specifically is creating those vulnerabilities, like asking someone in to the mom booth and saying, hey, it's okay, this isn't something I'm used to doing, but, and then with the taking those bad photos, knowing that you're gonna look like crap, but being a part of that club and like, oh yeah, it's like you've gone through something horrible together and you survived, so you're building community that way. And you saw those people in your thing, like taking pictures and being like, woo, I did it. And it's like riding a roller coaster, like you're getting over something. And I love how you wove the community together with that authentic, vulnerable experience. Do you know what I mean? That was just very juicy. It's like something I haven't seen in public work ever.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, that's all.
Let me put it this way. Every single thing that I have done so far is being backed up by somebody in the place that I live at. To me, community is people that can help you, that you can trust, but are not even necessarily your friends. It's that sense of that you belong to a space and that you can do things for that space to make it better. To me, that's for me what community is. And I will wash my neighbor's house even if I don't know him, because I feel that it's part of my responsibility. So when I do something that engages the community, I don't even think about the engagement part. I think about more like a share and make them part of the work, I guess, or make them realize something about the community to make it better. But it is that sense of us together. I think it varies. I think viewers, regardless of the subject, or people regardless of the subject, have the choice to either be attracted or not to it. And certain things I know will work better. Let's say if you know anything about Cuba, if you've been there, if you know anything about culture, you will be able to find certain things in the installation that I have here that other people might not be able to. But I believe that if it's not offensive to you, you can to an extent and enjoy it. And even if you don't understand it, at least be exposed to something that is different. Did that answer your question? Okay.
And to build off on that really quickly, I mean, I think what you're getting at too is just the idea of empathy. Is the idea of of understanding that everyone is coming from a different place. You may think about different things. You may come from you may be completely different, and you may butt heads ideologically, politically, whatever it happens to be. But at least understanding where that person is coming from a little bit more, so that everybody again puts those differences aside and then finds something communally to care about. Like even if it is just on a human-to-human kind of level, in a way that you can then see and feel maybe what someone else is talking about, identifying those circles where you feel comfortable with uncomfortable discourse. You feel comfortable with sharing opinions. You feel that at the end of the day, even though you may disagree just completely, you still empathize with them, and there's a certain level of respect that comes with that. And so I think it's promoting dialogue, empathy, and then again, that base level of respect.
I think there's something also like I often use the term of being site-specific. I know that you were using that as well earlier. And that I think is really sort of a grounding thing in terms of, which often overlaps with a geographic community. And using either the location of those murals or the location of those houses as a grounding element, so that everything everything that's in there has to relate to that spot. That's another way of kind of doing that outside of the people who kind of have come and go from those areas.
And real quick, and I understand what you're saying. We also have a community, us as state-of-the-art artists right now. And we actually have created a Facebook page that is a private page just for us. And that's our community. And we've been sharing news and information related to this event. And it does create a sense of community to that extent too. So it doesn't have to be tied to a geographical location.
Like traditionally, like when you think about making artwork, like you're as an artist, you're taught to think about your audience. It's not just something that's this object that just sits on its own and just communicates. It's how does it communicate? What do you want it to communicate? Consider how it's going to be received. So I love when you ask the question about community, because I feel that community puts a human face on what art is trying to do, which is to talk to an audience.